whatever. I'd like to introduce our panellists. So starting at my top left-hand corner, there's Karen Brown from Boost, Lancashire, Hassan Ditter from Pendle Borough Council, Jonathan Frank from Tax Assist Accountants, Chris Manker from the Federation of Small Businesses, and Catherine Fogg from the Pennine Credit Union. So today is an online Q&A for Pendle businesses and financial support for your business. What we've done is ask people to submit questions, and there are people who submitted questions who aren't able to be here today, so we're recording this so we can distribute it afterwards. So if we go on to question one, so question one, general question. So what financial support can I get for my business? I.e. bounce back loans, grants, rebates, anything like that. So if we come first to Karen Brown from Boost.
Okay, good morning everybody. So I'm Karen from Boost Business Lancashire. We're Lancashire's growth hub. And in this current situation, we've changed our focus and we launched what we call the Ask for Help campaign. So we're advising businesses about what business support is out there. So in terms of the loans and grants, SME businesses working in the retail, hospitality and leisure industry can apply for a business rate relief grant. Your local authority should already write to a business if they are eligible, and then they can claim that grant, and it's up to a rateable value of £51,000, and they can get a grant of £10,000, and they're being turned around in about 10 working days. So we're seeing that most businesses across Lancashire who are eligible for that grant, you know, the council has written to them and they have successfully applied for those. People may be familiar with the British Business Bank. They've got two loan schemes out, one being the bounce back loan scheme that the government announced recently. SME businesses can get between £2,000 and £50,000. Again, if you go across to your approved lender, most banks now are giving out the bounce back loans, a short application form to fill in online, and then decisions made by the bank within about 24 hours and the money's going into the account then. So that's quite a quick way to access the money. And again, there is the business interruption loan scheme as well. Again, this is for SMEs. The government guaranteed 80% of the loans, and it's interest-free for the first 12 months. And then for the self-employed people, there's the self-employment income support scheme. I think that's capped at £7,500, but again, if people are self-employed, they need to look at their last tax return, what they're putting in, and then a figure is worked out and paid out to businesses. So there's a lot of support out there. Here at Boost Business Lancashire, you know, we're open for business. We're helping the business community to navigate all these different loan schemes. So people can get in touch with us, the number on the background behind me, or visit the website. We can put you in touch with a business relationship manager. It's a free service and it'll just help you pick your way through these different loan schemes and what's available to you. A lot of businesses come to us saying, you know, we had no idea what was available. All this information's coming out, we just don't understand it. You know, they call us up and there's some really good answers out there for businesses and they're taking full advantage of the schemes out there. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Karen. Question two, what support can Pendle Council offer me with my business rates and rents? So Hassan.
Okay, so can I very quickly just pick you up on what Karen was saying before I go into this question? In terms of the grants, at Pendle we've paid out so far 1,721 of these grants to our small businesses that need it most. We've identified the remaining eligible properties and businesses that haven't applied, and we are contacting them directly because it's one of our key criteria now is to support businesses. So going back to the question in regards to business rates, it's similar in terms of the criteria. If your business falls within the retail, leisure and hospitality sector, you are exempt from paying business rates in this financial year 2020-2021, and you do not have to do anything. So the council, we've worked through our NNDR list, and we've identified the businesses which are eligible for this support, and automatically we've cancel direct debits. So with the grant scheme, it was, if your rateable value was £51,000 or less, you're eligible. With this, the rateable relief programme, regardless of what your business rates are, you will not pay any rates this year as long as you fall within the retail, leisure and hospitality sector. So in regards to the what we can do to support you with your rent, it depends really. If you are renting from Pendle Council, we are offering up to a 3-month holiday break, rent break. That doesn't mean you're not going to pay your rent back at any point. It's just you can take a 3-month holiday. Your rent will still be due in full by 31st of March 2021. It's just to give kind of tenants the flexibility to manage cash flows during this kind of difficult period. If you are renting in the private sector, again, your landlord will probably want to work with you. So if you are struggling to pay the rent, have that chat with them, see if you can come to some sort of an arrangement. But again, kind of going back to the grants, the up to £25,000 grant, hopefully that will assist with cash flow for those businesses that have applied for it and been paid out.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Hassan. So question 3 is, what help is available from the DWP for people who are self-employed? We had Azra Ahmed from the DWP, should have been on the call, but due to technical difficulties can't. But they've sent through a lot of answers anyway. So if I read out what they sent through. So self-employed people, obviously currently there is a self-employed application from the government, which I'm sure Jonathan can tell us about, for the self-employed grant. But self-employed people can apply for universal credit. You don't need to attend the job centre to do that. Apparently they would normally apply something called the minimum income floor, which is assumed level of income. However, it's been temporarily relaxed. If you're gainfully self-employed, it says here, your business assets will not be taken into account when you make a universal credit claim. So it won't take into account the money in your business, what you own. So there's additional support being offered by HMRC through the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme, which we will go on to. So universal credit payment will adjust if you get that grant. Something to bear in mind though, if you are receiving tax credits from HMRC, if you submit a claim for universal credit, they stop and they will not restart. So that's something to bear in mind for people who are thinking of taking universal credit out. Yeah, so that's what Ozzy sent through for that. So coming on to question 4, if we go to Jonathan for this, am I eligible for a self-employed grant if I'm trading as normal?
Yeah, so this is the sort of question we've been asked, because obviously we've got a lot of clients claiming the self-employed grant. I mean, HMRC have made the system very straightforward for the vast majority of self-employed people to go on to their site, check their eligibility. They need a gateway account, but that's pretty easy to set up. And then many have already been able to click through to actually claim the grant. HMRC calculate the figures based on previous tax returns up to 1819, so the data's already there. And quite a few have already had the money come into their bank accounts. But as the part of the process is a declaration that you have been adversely affected by coronavirus. Now, it's for probably the majority of self-employed people, it'll be obvious they've been affected. But some people have been worried that they actually haven't seen a reduction on income. Can they still? But they're being told on the system that they're eligible because they were self-employed on their tax returns in 1819. They had self-employment, majority self-employment income, therefore they're eligible if they're still trading, but they haven't seen a reduction on income yet. So there is a bit of uncertainty about this. HMRC have done a webinar where they've said that businesses should be keeping evidence of how they've been adversely affected, which for many will be a reduction on income, but it could also be business being closed. And it could be a reduction on sales because there's a sort of lag between sales and income. So somebody might have had a contract that they won in January, February. They might be a freelancer. They might have been invoicing it. They might even have more income in March, April, and May. But they might not have any sales and income going forward. Now, to us, that would be adversely affected because their sales figures are down, even if their income's not down. It's a little bit of a grey area. And so the advice is just to keep all the evidence that, yes, people should claim the grant if they have been affected through reduced sales, through closures, through reduced income, but keep the evidence. And HMRC are likely to do some spot checking. I think given that the definition being adversely affected is fairly broad, I think anyone that's really been affected in any way is going to be able to, HMRC aren't going to really be challenging heavily on it. That would be our advice.
Okay. Lovely, thanks, Jonathan. So the next question was one for the DWP, one for Aussie. So will the self-employed grant affect my universal credit claim? So I think I touched on that, Jonathan's touched on that. So it will be treated as earnings effectively. So as you expect. So any money coming in from the government, any SEI, SS support will be treated as earnings, and then the universal credit payment will adjust in response to that. So if that might cancel that out. So then you wouldn't get universal credit anymore, but you'd be getting the self-employed support. So question 6. So if you come to Chris for this, Chris from the FSB, can I make staff take holiday while they're on furlough?
Yes, you can, but you need to give them notice, double the notice. In some cases, it might work out better. It's obviously a question for HMRC. I'd speak to them first before you do that, because there is conflicting evidence out on the sort of web, really. But basically, it might work in the employee's favour as well, because they may get slightly more money out of it that way. But you do need to give twice as much notice as, so if they want 2 days holiday, you've got to give 4 days notice. But as I say, it's one to check with HMRC, because the system has been changing a little bit throughout throughout lockdown. Workers can take holiday, but obviously work out the processes through HMRC before you actually take any of that on board.
Okay, I think that was an employer worried that people are on furlough now, so when they come back to work, everybody's going to be saying, right, lovely, I'll have a month off, because everybody's got. No, it's all open to discussion. Obviously, I did read somewhere that they were looking at extending you could take your holiday over the next 2 years, sort of spread it out a little bit further, or employers could make the staff take the holiday now, in which case the employees may actually get some more money out of it than on their 80% furloughed rate. So again, it's just one to check with HMRC before you actually embark on that conversation with an employee.
Okay. Can I just add something to that? Yes. I've spoken to our HR consultants about that, and they've confirmed that yes, you can definitely let staff take or ask staff to take annual leave, and you can also put them on unpaid leave. But I think there are some rules, and maybe Jonathan will know more about this, about carrying your holidays forward, because you've got to accrue in your accounts and things like that. So I think it's not my bag, but you would need to check with your accountant about that, about accruing the holidays for the next year or so.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely that accruals process that needs to be gone through to check to make sure. Yeah.
Okay. Anything to add, Jonathan, on that?
I mean, different employers have different policies normally about how much holiday people can carry forward. But there was, I read something as well, and I can't remember. It was at least 2 or 3 weeks ago. There hasn't been much commented on, where there was government said that on a more sort of statutory basis that employers should be allowing employees to take forward more holiday. I think it was up to 4 weeks over the next 2 years. If an employee wanted to, but then that sort of goes against the requirement that the employer can require staff to have holiday. So there is a bit of I think it probably needs someone from HR to comment on that.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, everybody. So, Jonathan, we're over with you again now. But how can an employer get refunded for the 14-day sick pay? How do they go about that? Yeah.
So this is it's a bit ironic, this one, because it was one of the first measures that was announced in the budget back in about middle of March. There are claims mechanisms that they brought forward sooner than they had said, like the self-employment grant and the furloughing, but this one is not yet in place. Now, the employer can claim back £94 a week sick pay that they pay the staff. So that is less. That's only just less than £200 for each staff member that's isolated for 2 weeks. They said that the mechanism should be available from Tuesday, the 26th of May, and it'll be a portal. It'll be straightforward. It will be similar to the kind of furlough claims. You put in your PAYE reference, put in your bank details, put in the dates, the relevant dates, and then just for the employer to keep records of the sickness that was the employees and the sickness and the dates and that sort of thing, in case their HMRC did a spot check. So that's how it's going to work.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question was, can I trade as self-employed while on furlough? Now, that I'm not quite sure whether that came from somebody that's sort of owner director or as somebody that's employed, so an employee that's been furloughed. So we asked the DWP, they said, yes, you can. However, furlough pay and any income will be considered against universal credit if you're taking universal credit out, so would remove or may remove the entitlement. And a slightly longer response, they've had a few responses, that if your contract allows, you may undertake other employment while you are on furlough. So it won't affect your employer's grant for you. But self-employment, they said, is probably treated as exactly the same as class 1. So they said really it's something to refer up to HMRC for intricacies. However, yes, generally you can, but your earnings are then taken into account. So if you're returning a self-assessment, they'd have to go on there. So yeah, basically yes, but you need to declare it. Jonathan, anything to add on that?
No, we've had a few cases where this practical cases for clients have, or people have asked us, is there any limit, any restriction, and the answer is no. Go ahead, and if you can earn money while you're on furlough, then that's fine as long as it gets taxed.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so we've had a few questions on this. So how can I manage my cash flow or maintain a positive cash flow at this time? So Chris, if we come to you first for that.
Yeah, Sure. Well, basically, cash flow is really a question of maintaining, maximising your income whilst limiting your outgoings. But it's one of those things. It's easy in theory. We've shown that the FSB's done surveys that have currently got 34% of Northwest businesses that have failed to make or face severe difficulties in making rent or mortgage repayments as a result of this pandemic. So the first thing that you can do is chase all outstanding invoices. You can either chase them yourself or use debt recovery services such as the FSBs if required. There's also invoice factoring as well, which some companies may already be taking on board, which will guarantee a payment coming in, or at least part of it. Basically, as regards outgoings, there may be deferments available for utilities and your rent, and actually you might be surprised if you speak to your landlord the powerful position that you might be in. The option for the landlord would be to have an empty shop or to have you in it with some more payments coming to the landlord at some future date. So it's actually not a bad negotiating position to start off with. And I'd like to think that landlords will be quite accommodating at this time because, as I implied earlier, there's nobody else knocking on their door asking for space at the moment. There are other sort of options that you might do if you deal sort of directly with the public. Sometimes you can do things like prize draws. We've heard of a few members doing that. To bring in some money for goods or services that will be delivered later. That might work for you, it might not work in your business model. The Sybil's scheme has been in place. It doesn't really apply very well to smaller businesses. The average loan I think was around about 160 grand. But since then we've had the bounce back scheme put in, which has performed much better. And the bounce back loans, obviously a very welcome cash injection, give you a bit of a buffer until you can sort of see where things are going to be coming from and how quickly you can expect to get back to normal. There's a 12-month interest-free payment period available with those, and after that there's a further 5 years. I think it's at 2.5%. So basically it's really sort of batten down the hatches on trying to call in as much money as you can, and then also try and speak to the people that you owe money to, and hopefully between the two you'll end up in a position that is manageable.
Okay, brilliant. Catherine, have you got anything to add on that?
No, I think I agree with what all Chris says. Maybe look at different ways of bringing in income. If you can put your businesses online, things like that. But I think if you are going to make some arrangements with people you owe money to, the sooner you do it, the better. Even if you're not sure whether it is going to affect you, just contact them, and I think they'll be more willing to listen to you and take you serious if they know you're making an effort. So contact everybody as soon as possible and work with them to try and sort out some payment arrangements.
Okay, brilliant. And so Catherine, the next question's for you. So what personal finance options are available, outside of the business world for people that are looking for some support?
Yeah, it may be strange me being on this webinar because we don't do business loans, we only do personal loans, but a lot of businesses have clients that may need personal finance. And while there's not a lot of large loans being issued at the moment because people aren't very confident about taking loans, we do offer a lot of small loans, just for day-to-day living with, just the panic buying of food and freezers to put the food in. So we are still operating for loans. But I think if somebody is taking a loan, whether it's a business or a personal loan, the first thing that people need to think about is when and how they can pay that back. And for businesses and for people, it'll be really difficult at the moment because your businesses are affected. You're not sure how they're going to recover, and projections are going to change, budgets are going to need to change. But the last thing that you want to do at the moment is take a loan to get you through the next couple of months, which you're going to have problems paying back when the payments are due. Missed payments affect credit scores, which could affect future lending. The last thing you want to worry about is being over indebted when we're trying to go into recovery. So I think, and it could be just a very basic plan for households, and how much do you spend, how much is your income, what have you got left, or a complete change of your business projections, but check that you can afford to pay that loan back once the repayments are due. And if there are any loans out there at the moment that you can't afford to pay, contact your lender. See if there's any insurances that could cover payment holidays. And most people are doing payment holidays, whether it's loans or British Gas or whatever. Just contact people and talk to people.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. So the last question that we have before we go on to the live Q&A from Andy and Helen is, what are the government discretionary grants and how can I access them? If I could come to Hassan for that.
Yes, so the government, obviously it's announced quite a substantial recovery programme to support businesses. But having said that, there are still some businesses that may fall through the gaps. So the government's announced additional funding. It's a 5% uplift to the £12.3 billion already announced. And ultimately it's called the Local Authority Discretionary Fund, and it's for businesses that have slipped through. So I've got here a few more details. So it's targeting small businesses that are in shared office spaces or other flexible working spaces, such as industrial parks, science parks, and incubators. So obviously with the existing funding, if you do not have a rateable bill on your name, on your business name, you wouldn't be eligible. So we've got instances where companies are sharing premises. So this is to target them so that they can still access some support. It's also for regular market traders who do not have their own business rates assessment, B&Bs which pay council tax instead of business rates, and charity properties. Again, charity properties, they don't usually receive small business rates relief, so they were ineligible under the other funding. So this fund is for those businesses that have slipped through. Key point to stress though is that if your business is eligible for any of the existing funding, such as the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme, the Small Business Grant Fund, the Retailer Hospitality and Leisure Grant, we've got the Fisheries Response Fund. So that's just a few. But if your business is eligible for any of the other government funding, then you aren't eligible for this particular grant. This is primarily for those businesses that cannot get support from anywhere else, just to keep them going. In terms of where Pendle is up to now on this, we are currently putting together an online application which we're hoping will go live ASAP. And again, as we did with the small business grants, we're kind of working through our records, and we will be writing to those businesses that we feel are eligible for this particular funding. Again, we won't get it right straight away, so we will have an online marketing campaign to go alongside this, saying if you feel you're eligible, apply online. But hopefully we should have everything set up in the next week or so for businesses to take advantage of this funding.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Hassan. So that was the last of the list of questions we've got. Andy, have you got anything you'd like to ask our panel?
Yes, excuse me, morning everybody. My name's Andy Platt from Simply Corporate. We're an insolvency practice based in Pennine, and the difficulty we have is that nobody wants to speak to us, nobody wants to speak to an insolvency practitioner, but at times people need to. And the big message that I've got from this morning so far is that everybody has said you need to speak to people, you need to speak to each other. We're all in this together. And I think that is really important to stress. And I just wondered, maybe going around the different organisations, have you seen the inquiries or the request for information? Has it increased over the last few weeks? Has it peaked, or has it changed in any way? I just wondered, what your thoughts were on that.
Hassan, if we come to you first.
Yeah, okay. So Rachel and I have kind of an ongoing joke about this. Initially, when the lockdown was announced, my telephone, it was literally like a call centre. It was call after. Initially a very high spike that's kind of fizzled out, but I have noticed over the last week or so businesses are coming back to, in particular, those businesses that have fallen through the gap, which again I had a few difficult conversations, because obviously we want to support businesses, but the guideline, it was set by central government, so sometimes it was a case of saying, I completely understand they need this support, but in accordance to the guidelines, they just weren't eligible. So hopefully with this new funding announced, we can then go back to those businesses and provide them some support.
Yeah, excellent.
Lovely. Catherine?
We had a lot of our clients ring up for payments holidays, and it's personal finance, but a lot of people are self-employed and they've got personal loans with us, and their businesses aren't operating. So, and I think that really spiked in the first couple of weeks. And I think for a rough guide, I think we've got about 6,000 people with loans for us, and we've probably got about 120 people who are on payment plans, which is not too bad really. And yes, we're working with them on payment plans. So those are the people who have contacted us. The problem is the people who are burying the head and not contacting us, which will probably start appearing in the next couple of weeks. What has surprised us, and maybe it shouldn't do that, because we're a savings and loans cooperative, we've had quite an increase in savings. So there's a lot of people who can't spend the money at the moment, so they are putting the savings with it. So that's a really good positive feel, really, that people are saving. There's a lot of people struggling, but there's a lot of people who aren't as well. So there's a balance there.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Karen?
Okay, yep. So initially, again, once the lockdown was announced, we noticed a big spike in inquiries. People, getting in touch, wanting to know about how to claim the small business rate relief grants and just business support advice in general. As the last few weeks have gone by, the inquiries have quietened off slightly, but sort of echoing what the others have said, really. I think as the lockdown starts to ease and businesses come out of that, where government have kind of put us into these bubbles, if you like, and staff are on furlough, I think once it all starts to ease and reality hits, that's probably when businesses will find that they'll need to reach out for the support again. And probably, Andy, then in your world, in that insolvency world, you could imagine you'll probably start to see a spike yourself then in maybe businesses, unfortunately, that once they come out of that furlough scheme or come out of the lockdown completely, are struggling.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, we've had been very busy because of everybody's got slightly different circumstances, and there have been quite a few clients and inquiries, people that have kind of slipped a little bit through the gaps. If they've only started out in 1920 tax return, the tax year, as self-employed. I mean, you know, in particular, people that may have been trading self-employed and then they've gone limited, but during 1920 they've lost out, you know, because they're not getting the self-employed grant, and they may not have even set up a payroll yet, you know, and they've missed out on the furlough. So yeah, there's been a few. So and I think I imagine that there'll be a bit of a tail, long tail in terms of the business problems that kind of emerge later in the year, because the support, you know, has all been sort of now more upfront, and I think, you know, they're obviously desperate to stop businesses closed, to stop people losing their jobs and having to start claiming. But you know, support's not going to go on forever, so I think that's when people will really get into problems later on in the year, and into the next year. So
yeah, okay, thanks, Jonathan. And Chris, what have you found with the Federation of Small Businesses?
Yeah, really busy. The various helplines, particularly the legal helpline, has received an awful lot of inquiries, but just general business support. Again, a phenomenal number of inquiries coming through. And also, one thing that sort of sparked up recently has been a whole series of Facebook pages for local regions. And I've noticed on that there's an awful lot of interaction between members, which has surprised me, actually. I didn't think that Facebook would be used like that for sort of businessy type things. But the COVID pages have been very, very good, and there's been a lot of questions put on there. People seem to be quite comfortable to do that, and it's been members as well as FSB staff that have been responding on there as well. So that's been useful, because it's been sort of fostering a bit more of a community as well, which has been great to see. But yeah, massive amount of questions to be asked, and a lot of reassurance to sort of take people through the various stages. Which is tricky because you don't really know where it's all going. But, you know, hopefully it's all moving in the right direction. It seems to be. But yeah, the staff at the FSB have been fantastic, really, putting in enormous amounts of effort to make sure everybody gets a response and gets something useful out of it as well.
Absolutely. Helen, do you have any questions for the panel?
Well, no, I was just dialing in, Rachel, just to get a feel of how things are locally, see if there's any tips and I could pick up and things as well. It's good to hear about how you're handling furlough and some of the questions that have come up and things as well. So, no, I'm okay, thank you.
You're all right. Hey, nice to hear you. Is everything all right at the hospice?
Yeah, all's pretty positive. We've got some services closed and we've had to open extra beds and things like that. Fundraising obviously is a challenge in this world, so we're predicting a significant loss in fundraising, having to think of alternative ways to fundraise. But we're doing okay. It's a challenge, but it's a challenge we're rising to.
No, brilliant. Lovely. Thanks, Helen. Andy, anything else to ask?
No, I think that sort of echoes my thoughts. We originally the message we've been trying to get out is just like the boost. It's important to ask for help and not just bury your head. And it's good to see that there's so much help and advice available from every sector. And it's just that people just need to put their hand up and ask for it. So it's good. It's good that everybody's getting the message out there that get in touch and ask for help, and it's there if you need it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you, guests, and thank you, panelists. And I'll see many of you again at about 10 to 11. And thanks very much for coming along, and I hope everyone's got something out of it today. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.